Please be seated. This day is never easy. It's the day most of us want to avoid more than any other. I guess it makes sense. Why would you want to come and watch someone you love suffer? Someone you believed in? Someone you thought was going to be the one who changed everything? Why would you want to watch him be beaten, paraded, bloodied, and weighed down by a cross that will become the tool of his torture down Lyons Avenue and across Main Street and out to the hills across the freeway from Eternal Valley, where there's nothing to do, watch him die? And yet, that's exactly what this day calls us to do. We won't want to, we won't like it, but we must do it. We must do it because there's something powerful that only Good Friday can teach us. And I think it's in this very particular moment we find ourselves living in. The power of this day could not be more critical. As I shared last night, John makes it clear in his gospel that Jesus knew exactly what was happening. There's really no point in John's account today where Jesus doesn't seem to be in control. In fact, it seems that his control of the situation only increases as the story moves on. From his arrest in the garden to his final breath, there does not seem to be a moment that Jesus himself did not ordain. But for everyone else who followed him, who had believed in him up to that point, it was the complete opposite. Everything was completely out of control, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. At least that's how it seemed. No matter how many times he may have told them that he would be leaving them, that he had to die, that they still didn't get it. Maybe Mary, his mother, did, but I doubt any understanding she might have had did anything to diminish the anguish of a mother watching her child hang on a cross, dying a slow and painful death. And here we must be careful of layering any idealized view of what was happening here. No matter how divine Jesus may have been, and indeed I believe that he was the Word made flesh, but it's the flesh part that matters right now. He was a human being, and so his pain and humiliation and thirst and death were all real. If we don't recognize that Jesus actually suffered up on that cross, then we rob him of one of the things that makes him most meaningful to us in our own struggles and suffering, that he knows what it feels like to suffer from the inside. This was an excruciating day. Of his closest followers, we're only told of the presence of his mother, Mary, the wife of Clopas, Mary Magdalene, and the beloved disciple. Where were the rest? Simon Peter, was he there watching from somewhere in the distance? Could he have, after having denied Jesus so completely? Were the others watching or hiding? Can't say for sure. But I want to take a couple of steps back. How did we really get here? It's clear the chief priests saw him as a threat. We know this because we've been told repeatedly, but that's not it. Not by itself. We know that Judas betrayed him, but that's not it either. Not all by itself. Even Pilate isn't all in when Jesus is first brought to him. He goes to the crowd to find out their accusation, and rather than level a specific charge, they come back with the flimsy, if he weren't a criminal, we wouldn't have handed him to you. In other words, just take our word for it and do what we're asking. Pilate still isn't really buying it, but he is politically savvy, and he's actually playing a different game than that crowd is. He goes back to Jesus to question him some more about his identity. However, Jesus doesn't agree to play Pilate's game. It's only when Pilate realizes that he won't be able to trick Jesus into making a claim that would place him over and above not only the Jewish people, but of all of Rome, which would be punishable by death, that he responds with that infamous question: what is truth? Pilate knows, like many of us, that there's a difference between truth and the perception of truth. Still, he's not going to make a decision. So he goes back out and, choosing his words carefully, asks, I find no case against him, but you have a custom that I release someone for you at Passover. Do you want me to release for you the King of the Jews? And that crowd responds back, not this man, but Barrabas. Still, he tries to get out of playing a role in Jesus' destruction, but the crowd isn't having it. The intensity ratchets up until the crowd finally levels their clear and direct accusation. Even with a clear accusation, Pilate still tried to release him until finally we see the shrewdness of Pilate's game. He goes out and says one last time, here is your king. They call again for his crucifixion. Pilate asked them, shall I crucify your king? And the chief priests answered, we have no king but the emperor. There it is. Pilate's manipulation is complete. He got the dirt off his hands, and he got them to sell themselves out at the same time. In the process of trying to eradicate someone who was a threat to their way of life, they sold themselves out to the empire, the same empire that would eventually lead to their ruin anyway. I wonder, who have we sold ourselves out to? I've been wondering to myself for the last few months, and especially as we moved through Lent, are we still calling for Barrabas? It's easy to be here with over 2 millennia of distance from these events and not see ourselves in the story. Or if we do see ourselves in the story, to see ourselves as though standing at the foot of the cross weeping. We love Jesus. We would never call for Jesus' death, but it's more likely that most of us would be found somewhere in that crowd. Have you ever thought about who was in that crowd that day? We don't know where the disciples were. We just know that those who were closest to him scattered. Now, I'm not saying that they were in the crowd shouting, crucify him, or that we are specifically, but don't you think it's likely that they were there along with some of their friends and neighbors and family members, as well as others who were following Jesus? Do we really think that all the people who were there were all against Jesus? There was probably division in that crowd, just like there is division for us today. If you think about it, it all kind of feels just a little bit like this time we're living through right now. People that we love, people we've shared our lives with, calling for things that just seem outrageous to us, whatever your perspective may be about current national or global circumstances. I think the complexity of this day comes from the fact that in one way or another, most of us have either deserted Jesus or we have forsaken him to call Barrabas, whoever we think Barrabas is. That Jesus willingly sacrificed himself for us does not get us off the hook of accountability. And we have to sit with that today because we know where the story goes. We know what they didn't. We're supposed to do better. We're supposed to be better. I think it's important that we stay here today in this moment. I know we want to get to Sunday, but we need to be here right now in order to try to fully comprehend the complete and utter tragedy of this day. Otherwise, this day is just some transitory moment in the story of Jesus that just gets us to the resurrection. If we try to avoid the tragedy of this day and what really got us all here at all costs, we miss something. We miss the fact that a piece of us died on the cross that day. A piece of us dies on the cross today. But that's not the end of the story, because without death, there can be no resurrection. Without sacrifice, there could be no redemption. If we have no accountability to any of this, then our redemption is meaningless. I pray that what dies for us today is our desire to be right, our desire to win, our desire to decide who's in and who's out, our need to be in control of other people's lives. Jesus did not model any of this for us, and that's what got him killed. So today, I give thanks for the ability to gather here and look directly at the cross, unveiled and unvarnished, to meditate on its meaning for Jesus and for us, so that come Sunday, we can see clearly how miraculously it is transformed from a tool of torture to a symbol of salvation and hope. That is the power of Good Friday. And it is my prayer for all of us.